Hey, what up, beautiful people? This is me, the Infinity Midwife, coming to you once again. I'm in this beautiful nature. Today is Friday. Today is the day of love, self-care. Oh, look, I did my nails. It's not some things I do, but you know, sometimes a little extra self-care can go, you know, a little further into the application of, you know, feeling a little bit of glamour. Okay, guys, yo, I hope y'all are taking care of your mind, your hearts, and your whole being. I'm just all in white. Glorious, Gucci God, for real. So, I'm coming to you because I have another message. It's not poetry, it's an important message. I was led to do a few things these days that really got me out of my comfort zone, okay? And it's something that I used to do when I was a little girl, but life happened, and when life happens, and when in my situation a lot of traumas happen, it really got me into fearing a lot of things, okay? So I used to fear a lot of things, and very recently I was guided to do something. I was guided to do something that was very fearful, and I did it. And when I tell yo, yes, do you hear the winds? Thank y'all. Thank y'all. It was magnificent. It was a beautiful experience. Chérie, je suis en train de faire ma vidéo, je t'ai dit.
C'est pas c'est dangereux.
Non, c'est pas dangereux. Faut juste pas courir. Tu marches. And when I tell y'all that I was called to do something that, you know, I was very fearful of, and I still, you know, passed my fear, and I still went on and do it, I feel so much reward right now in my whole being because I just went with it. Like, I did not succumb to fear. And you know, one of the fears that I really had, and then I felt like it was really prominent in my life, was fear of death, fear of dying, fear of no longer existing. It's funny how it's a paradox, because half of my life I was not existing. I was on automation. I was on automatic, robotic, systematic replay. Oui. Chérie, je fais ma vidéo.
Maman,
Oui.
Dans Yakari, il a un arc magique de Yakari.
C'est vrai.
Comme toi.
Merci, chérie. So some of the teachings that my boy just said is, you know, we get into the forest to give thanks to nature. So, you know, we do some offerings. We get out here, you know, we talk to the trees. We say thank you to the trees. We give thanks by giving food. You know, we recognize nature and all its glory, and that's just beautiful. So by getting back to the subject, like for the most part of my life, I was very fearful of death. Like, and I felt like a lot of darkness, like being in the dark, being, you know, lights shut, you know, being in the dark and just be comfortable in that darkness brought me to fear a lot. Fear the darkness, fear the things of the unseen. I was very fearful. And I was called to do something where, you know, it put me face to face with my own fears of the darkness, fears of death. Assis-toi. Bonjour.
Le chien.
Ouais, mais le chien va rien te faire, chérie.
Il est gentil. Tu peux le flatter si tu veux.
Non, ça va être correct. Sambo, viens t'asseoir. Parce que il peut être nerveux, lui. Sambo, viens t'asseoir. So, bonjour. So in a lot of the darkness that I felt, a lot of fear of death that I felt was related to past traumas, past notions of, of fearing death. And so
Maman, est-ce que chez nous, c'est de ce côté?
oui, on va y aller tout à l'heure, okay? So, by going back to what I was saying, a lot of things that I used to fear death, I used to fear darkness, I used to fear the unseen. So basically, I was fearful of the feminine aspect of myself. That's why I was living the most part of my life out of the masculine, out of the masculinity, out of the toxic masculinity, which is to live in separation from my divine feminine, right? And how does that look like? How does that translate for me? Well, it's to not fear darkness. It's to not fear the unseen. It's to not fear death, And we've been so programmed in this society on so many levels to fear the feminine aspects of ourselves. How do we see this? Through Hollywood horror movies. Like there's a whole genre of movies where, talking about the unseen, talking about death, talking about resurrection, talking about zombification, talking about vampires, talking about the toxic feminine, talking about the toxic aspect of death, and very much glorifying, like on a global level, where it became like a lot of people today love watching horror movies, right? Maybe and it's not to throw shade to those who love horror movies. But I remember for me, it was a whole thing. Like I would be in terror watching horror movies, right? I could not. And it's just to come to say, like, we've been programmed to fear the unknown, to fear darkness, to fear death, to fear certain aspects of ourselves. And so in us coming into union with ourselves, in us coming into union with the feminine and the masculine aspects of ourselves, we need to start deconstructing. We need to start diving deeper into these fearful aspects of ourselves. And it's different for every individual. But I know that for me, death was a real big one for me. But you know what? Va derrière l'arbre, vite. And the funny thing is this, right? I was very fearful the entire, whole of my life. I was very fearful of death, like dying. But if I tell you today, now that I look at things in perspective, death was, the energy behind death saved my life. I'm not going to get into the whole details, but the death energy literally saved my life. I think I was saved by people that transitions, by ancestors, by the energy of death, by the unseen, by everything happening in the unseen. I was saved by that energy. That energy saved me. And because I was so convinced that I needed to live my life in this toxic masculinity, this way of being, of always, having goals, always going after the next, always thinking that my validation is externally driven, thinking that my worth is externally driven, thinking that in order for me to feel loved, in order for me to feel validated, accepted, I need to be in bondage with certain beliefs. I need to hold on to certain beliefs. I need to hold on to certain religious beliefs. I need to hold on to certain ideas of my own identity. I need to do things in a certain way in order to get me some results, right? And that's feeding and that's believing into this toxic masculinity, that in order to thrive in this world, right, we have to do things in this very slavery mentality, where we're always giving, we're always pushing, we're always doing, but we're never resting, we're never taking things into introspection. We're never like going through cycles, because life is just about cycles, right? And so I like in my journey, where I'm at in my journey, I am reconciling with my divine feminine. I am reconciling with the aspect of myself that I was very fearful of, whether it's death, whether it's my shadow, whether it's chérie, attends, non, n'ouvre pas, c'est la sauce, n'ouvre pas.
Maman,
Oui.
est-ce que la côte de la sauce,
Oui, mais tu vas pas manger ça parce que ça va te donner mal au ventre.
comme ça?
Juste, je te dis, n'ouvre pas. OK? Remets dans le sac.
Oh,
So it was very important for me to come to terms with the fears of all these things, like demystifying what is death. Don't you know that every time you inhale, on the exhale, you are experiencing death? Don't you know? Don't you know that every time you inhale, you are inhaling life? And on the exhale, you are dying, you are approaching death a little more. Like you are grasping what death is. Every time we go to sleep, we are coming into contact with death, because in aspects of we are transitioning into other dimensions, other aspects of ourselves, and this physical aspects of ourselves is no more while we are asleep. So we are experiencing death. Death is closer to us than what society was programming us to believe, right? And I'll give it to the religions. All three religions did major work in programming us into thinking and into believing that there is this afterlife, and in that afterlife you will be judged. Non, chérie. No, it doesn't work like that. We are judged at our every breath we take. We are judged every time we go to sleep. Every time you inhale, you exhale, you are being judged. What are the thoughts that is accompanying your breath? This is real. This is the real deal. And this is what religion has been teaching us, has been misguiding us into thinking that we need to live our life a certain way. We need to live in this masculinity, this toxic masculinity. We only need to live in this toxic masculine aspects of ourselves, and to completely ignore, demonize the feminine aspects of ourselves, and thinking that in the afterlife, so when we transition over onto the other world, we will be in heaven, we will find paradise, we will have all that we want. That is a big lie. That is an illusion, and that is the biggest misconception that religion has programmed into our thinking, into our own beliefs, into our own individual existence. And it's a major lie that needs to be demystified and that needs to be debunked. We are experiencing death at our every breath. You experience death every time you exhale, every time you nap, every time you go to sleep, you experience death. Death is... Oui, chérie, attends un instant. Okay, attends un instant. Death is just the other flip of the coin. This is how we're as close to death as what we think. We are walking in this world, in this plane, where we're thinking that we're just are by ourselves. No, it's not true. Those that transition, some of them are still here with us. They are hiding in the trees. They are going to the stores with us. They are in our homes. They are everywhere. But we've been told to fear them. We've been told that they are the devil, that they are demons, that they are this, that they are that. We've demonized so much of the feminine principles in our everyday life that some of us are convinced that we need to stay living in this masculine aspects of ourselves. Oui.
Tu sais, j'ai vu un gros insecte tomber.
Parfait. Reste tranquille, s'il te plaît. Non, tu laisses ça ici. Laisse ça, mon amour. Laisse ça, s'il te plaît. Les insectes vont te suivre avec ça. Dépose-le dans le sac.
Quoi?
Mais parce que c'est du sucre.
Sucre?
Oui. Mets-le dans le sac. Non, mets-le dans le sac, là.
C'est du sucre.
So, we've been convinced, whether it's through culture, whether it's through traditions, whether it's through, like, I'm not bashing tradition. Like, a lot of traditions reinforce religions. A lot of traditions reinforce toxic masculine principles. So that is why we need to start questioning the type of traditions we uphold so much upon ourselves and upon our children. We need to start deconstructing what culture looks like, what lifestyle looks like, when we understand and overstand that life and death, like, is just, it's a reflection, right? We like to think that people that are dead are actually very sad and very lonely and very... Oui? Chérie, on a presque fini, ok, mon amour? Donne-moi 5 minutes et j'ai fini. So we have had these preconceived notions of what death looks like through movies, through scriptures, through religions, through cultures, when in actuality, we live with the dead. Right? The dead is just a dimension that is just juxtaposed right above and below our right? So when we start thinking that death is closer to us than what we've been told, we then can embrace it instead of fearing it, right? You have all these notions and traditions and cultures that tells you that you cannot worship the dead. Or you cannot pay homage to the dead. You cannot have an altar to the dead. That's not true. You cannot communicate with the dead. That's not true. That is so not true. That's a big misconception. And so we need to come to terms with these false beliefs, false systems that keeps us in separation with all that we are. Because we are more than just this meat suit. We are a whole representation of God. And so in that representation, we have aspects of ourselves.
J'ai vu mon arc magique là-bas.
Okay, chérie, j'arrive. So we are more than just this meat suit. We are representations of God through this meat suit, through this expression of this meat suit. And we are also integrated in a whole dimension of dimensions infinitely. And when you get to understand that we are small, but we are also of God. It's like we're infinite. I don't know how to say that word. We are infinite small pieces of a puzzle, of an infinite puzzle. Does that make sense? And so we need to come to terms with thinking that death is scary, death is demonized, like death is the unknown. Every time you exhale, you are experiencing death. Every time you exhale, you are experiencing death. And that is why my previous video of how the feminine, how is the feminine expressed in the third part of the video, I talk about how the prayer Hail Mary is a discipline of how life and death are intertwined, right? The first verse or the first half of the prayer is an inhale prayer, and the second half of the prayer, it's an exhale prayer. Like it's paying homage to the dead. The first part is paying homage to life. That's why we talk about the womb and how Jesus is the fruit of the womb. And in the second part, we talking about how, we need to pray for us at the very end of our death. So it's the prayer that is paying homage to both life and death. And those that exercise, those that are devoted to that prayer, or that use that prayer to be devoted and to be devoted to, their awareness of their godly or of their selves or of who they are. I don't want to say God, because then God is a construct. People have, they have a thought of what is God. And so I try to avoid the word God, but all that you are, right? So people that devote their entire lives to be in synchronicity with that singularity, that awareness, when they use certain prayers, certain mantras, certain meditations, that awareness brings them in alignment with all that they are. And life and death are intrinsically, damn, I'm gonna say it, intrinsically intertwined. Okay, I bashed that word like I killed it. Okay, like those, we are, it's intertwined. Life and death is intertwined. So on the inhale, you are experiencing life. On the exhale, you are experiencing death. And when you come to terms with that, you need to start looking at life in a whole motion of color, in a whole range of what is life. Life is also death. Life is with death. So we shouldn't fear it. If anything, we should start communicating with it. We should start asking questions of what is there, what is out there that I have not seen, that made me feel fearful all my life. When I was younger, I used to go under the covers. I used to have papers laid out with a bunch of magazines underneath, and I would have many colorful pencils, and I would draw. Like I would be inspired to draw under the covers, right? And with a flashlight, or with a certain light, and then I would draw, and that would be the time for me to just draw. And I was not scared of the darkness around. I was not scared of just being very creative in the darkest hours of the night. I was like 7. I was like 7 and 8, and my siblings used to see me draw, and they were like, "Oh my God, you draw so well." And it was not like big things, and it was not like like Picasso, or it was not like big artistry. But for me, it was the expression of me during those darkest hours. I was utilizing those darkest hours to create beauty, right? And this is something we should do when we're young. So we need to go back to those times. We need to go back to how were you connected, or how did you grow? Like, what was the experience, or what was the what was the memory of you connecting to darkness? How were you connecting when you were younger to darkness, prior to you believing that there's ghosts, or there are malevolent spirits in the darkness, prior for you experiencing Hollywood movies telling you that in the darkness you will find demons, you will find all these things. I'm not saying that they don't exist, okay? As there is toxic masculinity energy and essences out there, there is also toxic femininity, right? Like, everything, as above, so below. Everything is a mirror, right? As there is good, or as there is life, there is also evil, right? So let's not be in the whole kumbaya love type of energy. No, let's recognize that there are all things in creation, right? There are righteous things, there are evil things, and they coexist, right? So now we need to know, where do we bridge our own darkness with our own light force? How can we come in unity with both aspects of ourselves? Because nobody is perfect. We did not come here to be perfect. We've come here to experience humanity. But we've experienced humanity in such a corrupt way for the last, I don't know how many ages, but we are stepping out of that. And that is why we are coming into a more of an individualized authority, or individualized expression of how power looks like at the individual level. How are you bridging darkness and light into your life today? Are you deepening your inhale? Are you deepening your exhale? All right, you guys, I'm gonna leave it at that. Okay, I'm gonna leave it at that. I hope y'all taking care of your mind, your hearts, your whole being. On that note, man, reflect back to the message. Stay blessed, stay well, And y'all, you know, it's Friday today. Take care of yourselves, you know, love on yourselves, you know, go out there in this beautiful nature and reflect on your life. This is the time to do it. And on that note, peace.